Remember, just like you don't give your 100%, even the teachers don't give 100%. And there's a huge difference it makes over a period of time. So if any of you have a calculator, I would have asked you to make this calculation. It's a very common thing. If you do 0.99 raised to power 365, you will come up with a figure which is 0.02. If you do 1.01 raised to power 365, you'll come up with a figure which is 37. The difference is 1,850 times. The moral of the story is, if you're slacking only by 1%, 365 is the number of days in a year, over a period of year, your net efficiency is 2%. But if you can get that 1% extra, over a period of year, your efficiency is 37 times than what it could be. Of course, it's mathematical generally, and I'm doing this just for the eyeballs, but it makes a point. And the point is, if you can just improve yourself a little bit, you can make a tremendous change in things around you. And the final principle, which is why I'm here to begin with, so I was just warming up so far, is make the right choices. Make the right choices. Why did I come to this? Recall the definition of leadership that I gave. Leadership is a process by which a person influences others towards an objective, to direct the organization in such a way that it makes it more cohesive and coherent. I got this definition in 2006 when I came into academia, and I thought, wow, what a definition. Two things happened. One, when I started training people on leadership, I would ask them to name a few leaders who matched that definition. I would get the usual suspects. I would get Gandhi, I would get Dhoni, I would get Ratan Tata, I would get JRD, etc., etc. I would get Mother Teresa. I would also get Hitler. I would also get Mussolini. I would also get Osama bin Laden. And when I looked at those names, and when I looked at that definition of leadership, I realized there was nothing wrong with the people who were naming them. Those people also matched that definition. And therefore, there was something missing in that definition. And then there was something that happened in 2008 that shook the world of business. And that was Ramalingam Raju. By the way, this name Ram seems to be a little under pressure these days. All of these Ram Rahim, Asha Ram, Ramalingam Raju. Now that shook the world of business. And that was crazy. Rampal, of course. And that was crazy. Why? Because here was a person who we all respected, who we all revered, who we all looked up to. I mean, Sanjay would know, being in Bangalore, almost worshipped Ramalingam Raju, Bangalore and Hyderabad. And here was a person called Ramalingam, heading a company called freaking Satyam. Yes. And then he scams everyone. And that kind of really shook me that, hey, what is this element in leadership that is missing? And I realized what was missing was a moral compass. And therefore, I made it my life goal to talk about this. Make the right choices. And why do we need to make the right choices? One of the things I want to be very, very clear about is I'm not a Baba. Not yet. My college nickname is Baba, I'm never a Baba. But I'm not a Baba yet. Especially now that I see what's happening to the Babas, and there's a trepidation in my mind about being a Baba. So I'm not here to talk about morality. So one of the distinctions that I wish to make is I'm not here to talk about morality, I'm here to talk about ethics, and these two in my head are completely different things. Morality, which comes from the Latin root moralitas, actually means the difference between good and bad. Whereas ethics, that comes from the Greek ethos, talks about the difference between right and wrong. And they're two completely different things. Why? Because something which is good may not be necessarily right. And something which is bad may not be necessarily wrong under all situations. Morality is something which is given to you a priori. Your religion will give it to you, your parents will give it to you, your community values will give it to you. Ethics is something which is contextual, morality in action. And therefore, that is something you will need to determine by using a certain yardstick. And the famous example in my head about talking about the difference between the two is killing of Karna. How many of you know Karna, the character from Mahabharata? Okay? So Karna was an extremely cursed man. श्रापित व्यक्ति था. In the time of Mahabharata, there were few people इनका काम ही था श्राप देना. घूमते रहते थे लोग. श्राप, श्राप, श्राप. Durvasa, Parshuram. And everybody in the Mahabharata time who could give a shrap had actually given a shrap to Karna. I'll take the story, fast forward it, day 17 of the Mahabharata. Karan is finally having a duel with Arjun, and then once again, because of some previous shraap, the wheel of the chariot that Karan was driving got stuck in earth. So he first told this charioteer, who was another king called Shalya, that Shalya, go and take it out. Shalya showed him his JD. This is my job description. Sorry boss, not happening. I'm not going down. So Karan himself got down and then tried to bring out the wheel of the chariot outside. Much as he tried, the wheel kept going in. It kept sinking in. Arjun meanwhile was shooting arrows at him. So Karan told Arjun, relax. Can't you see that I'm unarmed and I'm trying to take the wheel out of the mud? So relax and we'll continue that duel after some time. So Arjun got a little embarrassed. He stopped. Krishna immediately admonished him that, are you a moron, Arjun? Shatru samne hai. Baan chalao kar. So Arjun again got up and started with his arrows. Now this time Karan got very serious. And he said, Arjun, aren't you even thinking about how posterity is going to judge you? Aren't you even bothered about what history is going to write about you? Where is your Kshatriya dharma? And this time Arjun was very embarrassed. So he looked at Krishna, what boss? And he kept his bow and arrow down. Krishna knew that this time speaking to Arjun would be futile. So instead he addressed Karan. He said, Karan, how dare you talk about dharma? Where was your dharma when Draupadi was being disrobed? Where was your dharma when the Pandavas were actually almost killed in the Lakshatra? Where was your dharma when on the day 13 of the Mahabharata you all got together and killed Abhimanyu? How dare you talk about dharma? And Karan remembered all the curses that he had gotten and he smiled. He smiled and he looked at Arjun and he said, Arjun, do not think, do not feel embarrassed. Because if you look at the difference between the good and right, what Krishna is saying is the right thing to do. So get up and shoot at me. Arjun got up again and started shooting arrows, and one of those arrows carried Karna's head with it. Bad though it might be, in the context of what was happening over there, Krishna put across the thought process that it was the right thing to do. And therefore, it is this ethic that I want you people to be thinking about. Why? Because there is something called an ethical theory which you will need as an educator, be it a principal, be it a founder of an institution. And there are two dominant theories that the West have given us. I'm going to talk about them briefly, but I'm going to focus more on how are they relevant to you. Not these, but how are ethics relevant to you. One of the theories is consequentialism, which was given by Jeremy Bentham and then taken up by John Stuart Mill, his student, which says that the consequences of an action determine whether the action is right or wrong. Whereas the deontological theory, which was given by Immanuel Kant, said that it was the intention which mattered, not the consequences. Both of them have these problems, but I'm not going to get into the philosophical discourse, probably we'll keep it for some other time. Be that as it may, why do we need to talk about ethics to you? Because you have ethical considerations. Why do you have ethical considerations? Because there is something that the Upanishad says, that especially in education, a leader has to be a wise leader. And how do you become a wise leader? Whether you're a wise leader or not, how can we determine that? The Vedic framework. So, I don't know how many of you know that Yajurveda has a chapter, the 40th chapter of Yajurveda has 17 mantras, which are also called Ishopanishad, and Gita is an expansion of those 17 mantras. And what it says is that there are three dimensions which are necessary for a leader, especially in the field of education. One is ability to see things, which means ability to visualize. Now, Gaurav was talking about a vision called 2120. He was trying to give a vision. But my question to you is, do you have a vision for yourself? How many of you out here have figured out the purpose of your life? How many of you know why you are a human and what is it that you want to do as a human? 5 in about 150, 200 odd people. And still, all of you are doing fairly well in your life. If you are doing fairly well without having figured out the purpose of your life, why do you even need it? Why do you even need it? I'm going to share a part of my story. My story is like the Three Idiots story. So I was born many, many years back on Christmas morning at 10:50 a.m. And at 10:51 a.m., my dad looked at me and he said, "Usko engineer banana hai." 6 years later, my brother was born. at 1:10 a.m. And 1:11 a.m. my dad looked at him and said, "Isko doctor banana hai." And lo and behold, I'm an engineer, he's a doctor. But many years later, when I was sitting at the top of the Himalayan mountain, so I also happened to be a trained mountaineer. I spent 2-3 weeks in the Himalayas every year, trekking or climbing. I was sitting out there and I was reading a book. And something happened. I had my Buddha moment without the Bodhi tree. And I figured out the purpose of my life. That's not the important point. The important point is that even at that point of time, I was doing very well. I was working with Tata Steel, it's a great company to work with. I was working in Jamshedpur, which is a great city to live in. Everything was hunky-dory. But the moment I figured out the purpose of my life, all of that became irrelevant. What I'll tell you is, what was the book I was reading? Now some of you who might have heard this story of mine would know, but most people can't guess the name of the book. They all say, must be Mahabharata, must be Gita, must be Samved, because that's what they think I'm interested in, which I am, of course. But that book was a book which I'm sure you have read, and I'm sure you have it as a part of the curriculum. That book was Alice in Wonderland. Now many people think it's a children's book. I don't think so. It was one of those books which was given to me by my mom, and it was one of the more decent books. In the sense that the first book that my mom gave me, and she thought it must be a great book, was Godfather. Where she said, by God we have, Father we have, word is, and she's not very fluent in English. So she thought it must be a nice book. So that was the first book that I read, Mario Puzo's Godfather. And I said, wow, what parents I have. What a mom. All time, all offers that you cannot refuse and so on and so forth. But also Alice in Wonderland. Now the particular passage that I was reading at that point of time is a passage when Alice is walking and she reaches crossroads. So there are roads going in multiple directions and Alice is confused. Fortunately for her, she sees a cat coming from the other direction, and if you recall, his name is Cheshire Cat, it's a male cat. So Alice asks the Cheshire Cat, where do I go from here? Which road do I take? The cat says, that depends a good deal on where you wish to reach. Alice says, I don't much care where. The cat says, then it doesn't matter which road you take. But that's not the end of the passage. Alice realizes that maybe this was not the best answer to give. So as an afterthought, she adds, so long as I reach somewhere. The cat says, oh, you will reach somewhere if you walk long enough. Now there are two messages in this story. One an obvious one, the other a subtle one. The obvious message is, if you do not know what you want to do with your life, then do anything. यदि गंतव्य की जानकारी नहीं है तो आगरा के रेलवे स्टेशन जाओ, किसी भी ट्रेन पे बैठ जाओ. How does it matter where you're going? But the deeper lesson is that if you work hard in your life, you will reach somewhere. But is that where you wanted to reach? And the day the answer to that question comes as a no, everything that you would have achieved till that point of time in your life will become meaningless. And that's not a very happy position to be in. I mean, that is not the aim, but that's a fact of life. That's a fact of life. And this is what we do, that any time that such questions come to our head, we say, oh my God, dimag bahut philosophical ho raha hai, so jao. But that's not the solution, because unless you respond to that question will keep coming back. And therefore, extremely important that you have this ability to see. Please note, if you do not know where you are headed, if you do not have a personal vision, you cannot provide a vision to anyone else. Not your school, not even a collective that you're responsible for, that may include your family. First of all, you need to have a personal vision. And the second element it says is integrity. Now, integrity is defined in the Western philosophy as walking the talk. The Indian philosophy goes two steps beyond. The first thing it says is mansa vacha karma. Say what you mean and do what you say, which means there's a consonance between your thought, word and deed. Very tough, but attempt. And the second thing is, whatever you think, say and do has to be for the universal good and not for the individual good. Sarva ashama mitram bhavantu. Sarve bhavantu sukhina. It's not about a particular religion bhavantu sukhina. It's not Himanshun bhavantu sukhina and Gaurav bhavantu dukhina, etc., etc. It's sarve bhavantu sukhina. Everybody. Sarve santu niramya. Everybody has to be healthy. And once you do these, once you build both of these, in that case, you are a wise person. And that, they say, is what educators, the leaders, when it comes to the education field, ought to be doing. And why so? Because you have multiple responsibilities. The ethical conduct that you are responsible for is towards these four things. And very briefly, I'll talk about these. One is towards the students, the other is towards your practices and performance itself, your career itself, your field itself. The third is towards professional colleagues, the rest of the people. And fourth is towards parents and community. Now there are several elements, I can actually send them across to your email or something, but I'll talk to you about some which I believe are important. That you as an educator should not unreasonably restrain the student from independent action in the pursuit of learning. There are many teachers who would tell, no, this is the way. If you want to learn this, this is the way. I still remember a teacher of mine. So till 10th I was in Jeopardy, and 11th, 12th I was in Central School, and there was this teacher who used to teach me mathematics. And if I were to solve a problem in a different way, which you know, ये तो कोर्स के बाहर है, इसको ऐसे ही solve करना है. And it used to kind of, irk me at times, but then I did it. Fortunately, when I went for my engineering, once again I got a great maths teacher, and then he allowed me to experiment. And I realized such an important thing it was. You should not stop students from experimenting and trying out new things. Should not unreasonably deny the students access to varying points of view. One of the things that I see missing in my country today is the respect for dissent. The respect for dissent seems to be going down, and it's extremely worrisome. So of late I've started speaking about that. Dissent is something which actually has to be encouraged, because there cannot be any innovation without dissent, and more importantly, there cannot be a democracy without dissent. You need to provide space for dissent. And of course that space for dissent has to be based on tark and not kutark. But at the same time, when it comes to the students, you have to allow dissent of all kinds, because they would not be able to differentiate between tark and kutark. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we give them the right direction. Should not deliberately suppress or distort subject matter. Make reasonable effort to protect the student from conditions harmful to learning. Should not intentionally expose the student to embarrassment or disparagement, which means, please remember that even a young child deserves dignified behavior. And therefore, all of those days of the yore when you would hit your students, I still remember my vice principal in Jaipur, I used to carry a cane over here. And I've got many lashes of it. And simply because I used to bunk classes and play table tennis. The only thing I did not get beaten up too severely was because he knew that even after that, first to yahi aayega. So it was there, but it wasn't there to such an extent. However, gone are those days. Why? Because it actually impacts the fundamental dignity of a child, and you would be horrified if you look at the psychological treatises which talk about the impact of corporal punishment even after the child has grown up. It's tremendous, and therefore we have to treat people with dignity. Another important point over here, should not on the basis of race, color, and all of those dimensions exclude anyone from participation, deny benefit, or grant any advantage to any student. So please treat all of them in the same way. Now this is extremely important. Should not use professional relationship with students for private advantage, and that brings me to the most vexing point called tuitions. Because I find a lot of people who encourage tuitions. It's almost like the Sarkari hospital doctors. If you go to them in the government hospital, they'll say, "Ye yahan ilaj nahi ho sakta aapka. Mere clinic pe aaiye." Almost as if there is something, manna from heaven falling in his clinic, which would suddenly cure you of all the evils. Now similarly, this tuition thing, and I still remember a teacher who I remember still was my teacher in Central School. His name is Arvind Katyar. I think he was in Delhi, he was also the principal of some Central School, etc. Many a times I used to go to him, and my father once proposed that, why don't you take tuition, so why don't you accept money? He said, no, not at all. I mean, I love this guy and I love the way, so my favorite subject is physics, from those time onwards. Of course, now I like physics, mathematics, philosophy, and literature. But at that point of time, I was very focused on physics. And we would actually, sometimes when I wouldn't be able to solve a problem, because we had these two books, which were almost like, they were the biggest obstacles in physics. One was a book by Resnick and Halliday, the other was a book by Irodo. And Resnick Halliday was actually a bacha compared to Irodo. The Irodo problems used to be very cracko. And sometimes when I would not be able to solve a problem, I would go to his house. And there were many times when we would solve a problem actually, and I'm talking literally, I'm not exaggerating, standing under a lamppost. because he would be taking a walk and I would land up with a problem, and then he would stay there and would solve it. Sometimes even he wouldn't be able to solve, and while I was walking away, suddenly he would shout, Himanshun, come, something else has struck me. And then he would start again. And therefore, I had so much respect for him that when I got the letter which told me that I cracked the NTSC exam and I was 13th all over India, I did not tell my parents first, who were right there in that room. I received it, they were staying in the drawing room with somebody, I just ran out. I ran out and I went to that teacher's house of mine and I showed him, look, I got it. And the parents were wondering, where did he disappear? But fortunately I used to do that very often, that disappear in part, so they were quite used to it. And therefore, do not encourage this private tuitions, because it amounts to unethical practice. Should not disclose information about students obtained in the course of professional service unless it is required by law, etc. Ethical conduct towards practices and performance. Professional educator applies for, accepts or assigns a position or responsibility on the basis of professional qualifications. More importantly, maintains sound mental health, physical stamina and social prudence necessary. There is a leadership dharma which is propounded by Manusmriti, which says, Dhiti kshama dhamostyam shauchamindri nigrah dhi vidya satyam akrodho. Of them, one is called shauch. Now, not many people know the real meaning of shauch, but what it means is physical and spiritual and mental cleanliness. The Indian scriptures decided long time back that you have to be physically fit also if you want to be a leader, even in the space of education. Why? Because they say that a healthy mind can reside only in a healthy body. If you do not have a healthy body, you cannot have a healthy mind. Swasth sharir mein hi swasth mastish ka vaas ho sakta hai. And I'm not talking about mota patta here. I'm not talking about a particular BMI, etc., etc. But what I'm talking about is that you have to be physically fit so that you can actually stand in a classroom for 3 hours. Because only then would your mind be sharp, and only then would you have that moral authority to ensure and to also expect your students to be the same. And therefore, it has become a part of the ethics manual that teachers, educators, principals have to also keep themselves physically fit apart from being mentally fit. So this is something that you owe to your